Hello and welcome to Indus Special. I'm Meshal Malik. The Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, has made his first visit to Pakistan since being nominated Crown Prince. A visit that has been rejoiced by both countries respectively. This historic event has ushered in an era of strength in ties, cooperation, and brotherhood. What provides even a greater reason for optimism is that this visit has been undertaken at a time when Saudi Arabia is undergoing transformative social and economic reforms. The Vision 2030 project, which is spearheaded by the Crown Prince himself, will have tremendous positive impact on the milieu of Saudi Arabia. It also possesses the potential to have great influence on Pak-Saudi bilateral relations. On tonight's show, we will discuss what exactly the Vision 2030 reforms entail and how they will bring about a change for the better. Joining us for this discussion is Mansoor Jaffer, who's a journalist at Arab TV. And also joining us is Dr. Javed Iqbal, who's a professor at King Saud University and a representative of Saudi mass media. Thank you both for joining us. Dr. Javed, I'd like to begin with you. So can you please give us a brief overview of these reforms, the Vision 2030, what it entails, what are the highlights?
Well, basically, I won't call Saudi society as a closed society, but it was very cultural. I went to Saudi Arabia in 1979, and since then I've been there teaching at King Saud University. I witnessed the eras of at least four kings. King Khalid, after King Khalid we had King Fahad, then King Abdullah, and now we have King Salman.
Yeah.
What we see today is a dramatic change in the attitude of educationists and the total Saudi society now towards the youth. The young people, they realize the responsibility they have towards the country. The government is sending them for higher studies to the United States. So the Saudi we had 25 or 30 years ago is different from the Saudi we have today. Today's youth has been empowered. The second thing is that women now, they can drive. I remember in 2005 when I was going to interview the ambassador of the Philippines, then the women demonstrated driving there. There were 7 or 8 cars and women were driving it. And suddenly the police came and encircled it, stopped them. And the women were taken to the police station. And the result is that their husband had to give a written confession that in the future, they'll stop their ladies from driving. And so after that, they never drove. But now the change is there. And you will find the women taxi drivers now driving male passengers from Riyadh to Dammam, Riyadh to Jeddah. That's a huge transformation. Also, women now are getting more jobs now in offices. Formerly, it was not possible. So, the women empowerment, one thing. The second thing is, again, the youth have become more responsible.
And Mr. Mansoor, we know that each reform and each thing that is brought on has multiple effects that carry forward. So in this case, what do you think is going to happen? The youth is being empowered, women are being empowered, but how is that going to impact the society at a deeper level?
Sure, as Dr. pointed out that we can't call these days the Saudi society as a closed society because we see a lot of enlightenment and moderation in various aspects of the life, especially regarding the education of youth, especially the empowerment of women, because now the areas which were considered a taboo for this Saudi society in the past, they have been offered jobs in the judiciary as well. And the women have started practicing as a lawyer, so which has opened up new vistas of work for them. And this thing is certainly changing the overall mindset of the people, because women being the driving force in any society, especially the society which geologize the women values. So I feel that this kind of change is going to have larger and far-reaching impact on the Saudi society in the coming days. And we are witnessing a lot of positive changes that are taking place these days, especially the areas which were considered, you can say, a no-go area for the Saudis. Now there have been opening of the cinemas. In Jeddah, we have seen the opening of the cinemas, and it's a mega project that is going to take place, and we are going to witness.
And Mr. Mansoor, here, what has been the impetus to put forth this cultural revolution of sorts, which has, as you have stated, has gone into no-go areas, something that has never happened before. So what has been the driving force behind it?
Actually, if you recall that the Saudi society in the past was linked with the notion of terrorism and extremism. And after the 9/11, because we saw that there were a lot of blame, there were direct attack on Saudi Arabia in terms of various people who were involved in that attack, in the American attack. So they belong to Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia faced a lot of hardship on international scale, on international level. So successive regimes in the Saudi Arabia, they were trying to brush aside very hard this impression from the Saudi society. So there was a slow and gradual process of making these societal changes, because they did not want to bring a kind of revolution and then invite the orthodox member of the society or invite their criticism.
And of course, in any long-lasting objectives, structural changes take time. They can't just happen overnight. Dr. Javed, you also mentioned women empowerment here. And in universities, even the Vision 2030 report claimed that 50% of the graduates are females. So how are these reforms going to utilize the employment sector, the female employment sector, differently than it was done before? And how is focus shifting to female students now?
Well, formerly, the general notion was that women should stay at home. So they suddenly got into the field of education. They got educated. Today we have female doctors there, female engineers, and female office workers. And the society has accepted it because of two factors. One factor, that Saudi male is not yet fully ready to take up the jobs. The second factor, that there are so many expatriates in the country, and Saudi society has realized that these expatriates have to leave one day or the other day. So who is ready to take up this job? At present, females are there, so take them. They take up those jobs, and they're working very well in every way. Whichever office you go, you find females there, although they have full hijab and everything, but they work very well. They speak to you in the most efficient way. They satisfy you. But I am sure that slowly, as the male members take up these positions, it will change, probably come down to 30-70 or probably 20-80. But at present, we have more females working in the offices than male. That's one thing. The second thing that I realize is that Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has no restrictions on the female jobs. He wants the female to come forward and take over the jobs being vacated by the expatriates. There is a move now of not getting rid of expatriates, but unnecessary expatriates should leave the country. And so they are leaving the country. In millions they have left last year, they left the year before, but the people who are needed are there.
And of course, that aligns with their policy and their goal of reducing unemployment over there as well, right? And when we're talking about female employment opportunities, Mohammed bin Salman, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman also mentioned equal opportunities. So are there certain jobs that only are female-centric, gender-centric being introduced, or are there the jobs that were already in the market now being availed by women?
Nursing. For example, in medicine, there are some jobs only for female Saudis, and they are taking up those jobs. We don't have any male, nurses in Saudi Arabia. But even doctors, medicine, there are female doctors, there are male doctors, they are specialists. There are Saudi girls going to the United States and Britain and other Western countries and getting specialties or completing fellowships and coming back and taking up positions in the hospitals there, in the clinics there. So, and one more field is the business. Now, Saudi female is now out and out to start its own business. It's being encouraged. Jeddah Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the president is a female now. Her father was some time ago president of the Chamber of Commerce. So women are now
Yeah.
not only looking forward, but moving forward now towards making their country self-sufficient in various fields.
That is a very optimistic picture you paint there, but something that Mr. Mansoor mentioned here earlier was that there is obviously caution for there not to be a reaction from Orthodox Muslims in the community.
Yes.
But what can you tell about the community and society's response at large when we're seeing women coming forth? Is it all positive?
It is received very positively at large, but there are certain segments of society that had their own reservation.
Okay.
That is why the things went very gradually.
Yeah.
So Saudi government or the Saudi kingship, they did not open, not only open the avenues of the business and the jobs for the women folk, but they opened the new vistas that was considered a sort of no-go area for the women in Saudi Arabia in the past. That was the people's representation. They gave them the representation in their own shura. That was basically men-centric, men-focused, and there was no representation of the women. And later on, when they opened up the local body setup, most of the women folk, they took part in those elections, and those elections were held on the same parameter of democracy which the West or the other countries eulogize.
And what are the positive changes we're seeing in policy making with women participating more?
Because this opened up the new vistas of what we call means they were given or they were made master of their own destiny.
Yeah.
So they were having the choices what they want to do. They want to do business, they want to do jobs. So they were given a choice, and especially opening the new avenue of a sort of self-help that is called driving, because they were considered home-stricken people having no what we call facility or permission to drive. After opening this area or after giving them permission to drive, there have been a lot of job opportunities in these areas. Even the private companies like Uber, they opened up entrepreneurship or the partnership with the Saudi women folk, and they gave licenses to women so that they can drive as master of their own destiny and could become positive earning member of their family.
And when we're talking about this, how so many positive changes are coming about, how is that impacting diplomatic relations with other countries? Of course, the image is being bolstered of Saudi Arabia. What can you tell us about that?
It is received very positively on the diplomatic front as well, especially the societies which considered Saudi Arabia as a closed society, means the West or the Western capitals. They are opening their own various avenues for the women.
Yeah.
And there have been a growing trade relation between the females who are doing businesses in Saudi Arabia and new opening for them abroad.
Yeah.
So diplomatically, this image or this transformation of the image is received very positively, I feel.
ठीक है. And when we're talking about all of this, we're talking about opening up of trade. Dr. Javed, of course, one of the things that this vision statement focuses on is tourism. And the Crown Prince wants that 30 million holiday makers enter the country each and every year. What measures are being taken in order to achieve that goal? What's happening on that front?
Well, the first measure is that the visa fee for tourists has been reduced. That's one thing. The second thing is the huge tourist resort being built in the Red Sea called NEOM. NEOM is going to be opened up for every tourist from whichever country he is, from the west, from the east, north or south, and it has its own regulations, immigration regulations for those people. It doesn't have those restrictions of entry that we have for the holy places of Makkah and Medina or the Hajj sites now. So that's one thing. The second thing, NEOM is a very special city because it emphasizes technology and the use of energy, renewable energy resources. So probably they are going to use the solar energy and wind energy to run the power stations of the city.
So are other parts of the country also working towards renewable energy and creating a more sustainable environment policy?
Definitely. Some time ago in Riyadh, they opened up a solar energy station there. It is working very well. Then at King Saud University, they have also wind energy research center because Saudi Arabia is a desert and it has a lot of sun. I must mention here one fact that only 3% of the solar energy of Saudi Arabia can run 50% of electric stations of the world, of the whole world, only 3%. So you could see how much, I mean, it's a power, big power. Saudi Arabia is a big powerhouse. It has so much energy in the future also.
Yeah.
So even if petrochemical wells run dry, Saudi Arabia still will supply energy to the West in a large way.
And when you're talking about supplying energy, of course, also since there's so much research and technological development, there's also potential for exporting that to neighboring countries. What can you tell us about that? How will that change relations with the countries around? How will that impact diplomatic relations?
Well, it will impact very positively because the Western world especially lacks solar energy. I mean, the weather there doesn't allow them. Even if there is some solar energy, it doesn't have enough intensity. Saudi Arabia and the Gulf region especially has a lot of solar energy. Pakistan is one of them. They will still depend on Saudi Arabia and the Gulf countries for the energy supply.
Yeah. And since Doctor mentioned here how Pakistan also is similar to Saudi Arabia in that sense, we're also seeing similarities in the leadership goals of both the figureheads of the countries. Sure. Imran Khan here and Crown Prince, they both are wanting to promote tourism, a positive image, soft power, all of that stuff. What can you tell us about the future? What do you see happening after this visit, historic visit? What can you predict?
Actually, the things which unfolded in front of us during the recent visit crystallizes one thing clearly, that our Prime Minister Imran Khan has made the MBS his role model, especially in curbing the corruption. Yeah. Because he said that we are basically having a lot of potential in Pakistan, yeah, and Pakistan is full of resources, mineral, natural resources, each and everything. But the menace of corruption is taking up the tolls of all these positive development on our part. So that is why the sitting government, they have unleashed a campaign against eradicating the corruption, yeah, and there have been across the board accountability of the people who were considered doing some ill deeds during the past, even those who belong to the ruling party as well. Yeah. So the same thing was undertook by the Crown Prince Salman Mohammed in Saudi Arabia, I guess some 2-3 months back.
Yeah. So and $106 billion were recovered.
A huge amount was brought to the national exchequer, and the people were also those people who did not want to comply those commandments, they were pushed behind the bars and they were given imprisonment, confinements. So this is an eye opener for the people who are either their cronies or they want to do something in future on the same lines.
And Dr. Javed, what can other countries learn from this anti-corruption campaign that started in 2017 in Saudi Arabia and did reap many benefits? What are the lessons to be learned from this?
Now, just before I embark on this argument, let me support him. I've lived there for about 4 decades now, and I understand the Bedouin culture very well. What happens is that the owners of industries, factories there, or projects there, friends, Saudis, they usually meet outside Riyadh on a Thursday in their tents. They have packed their tents there as a picnic, weekend they spend in the desert. They meet there and they discuss all the business details in the tent there, in the secrecy, in the privacy. And then they take the decisions there in the tent, outside in the desert. Later on, their offices follow up, the file work and everything is signed. I believe that Prince Mohammed bin Salman and our Prime Minister have struck a very common chord between themselves. So I believe yesterday I wrote a column here. I said that that small car that Imran Khan drove was like a tent. So they conversed. We don't know what was between the two, but definitely a lot should have been achieved during that small drive they had.
And what is your prediction for the future? We're seeing this friendship evolve. We're seeing it being fostered. So what do you think can be expected from both countries in terms of diplomatic ties in the future, in the coming years?
Well, the Crown Prince said this is only the first step, $20 billion. First step, which means a lot has to come. And that decision probably was made in that tent of the car that he was driving. We'll come to know later about that. Definitely a lot has to be done.
And what else we need? The MBS has stated that consider me Pakistan ambassador in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
What else we need?
Yes, and with that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Salman Shah to our conversation here, who was a former finance minister. Thank you so much for joining us. And of course, the Crown Prince sent a very strong message when he said that he is the ambassador of the Pakistani people at home. With that, what is the potential of economic cooperation being fostered here? Please enlighten us.
Well, I think this was really a very landmark visit, and it has been much more than what I expected. There was a lot of warmth and the kind of programs which have been put in place, the MOUs which have been signed, and the institutional arrangement which has been made to follow up on this, the council and its composition and how they are going to meet every year. And I think this really sets the stage for a very strong economic partnership between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, which will really be over the next several decades. And so this will bring in Saudi capital and Saudi energy expertise, Pakistani manpower and Pakistani geography into play, the Chinese connection, this whole area, I think, is going to be a big source of economic growth for the world. Particularly after the end of the Afghan war, I think the potential would be immense.
And Dr. Salman, here when we're talking about the potential that this new opportunity has brought with it, when we're talking also about the Vision 2030 reforms, one of the main economic goals is to diverse from an oil-based economy. What potential does diversifying from an oil-based economy bring to Saudi Arabia, but also to the larger world, to the region?
You see, Saudi Arabia has energy and it has a lot of capital. It is a very rich country, and it can invest in new areas, new technologies. And so it is going to be investing a lot in its own economy, but I think it will also invest globally. And Pakistan and Saudi Arabian partnership could be very useful for both Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. So I think that if you look at the potential in Pakistan, there's going to be about at least 12 special economic zones under CPEC. Of course, there is the Gwadar port and the petrochemical complex, which is planned over there. Then there are lots of opportunities for putting in the minerals side. They have talked about that. There are opportunities in the tourism side. So I think it will be across all sectors. And the main thing is that Pakistan is a very large country in population terms, and our population is very young. I mean, almost 60% of Pakistani population is under the age of 25, which basically means that we have a huge pool of manpower, and that manpower can turn Pakistan into a manufacturing hub. And Saudi money and Pakistani manpower.
And Dr. Salman, while we're thinking about how this is going to impact Pakistan positively, also another thing that's coming up is while looking and analyzing the 2030 vision statement, there also seems to be as if Saudi Arabia is moving towards greater self-reliance. What can you tell us about that?
Saudi Arabia is probably going to move into a lot of elements of the knowledge economy. They are putting a lot of money in and investment in their education system, the universities. But since Saudi population is not very large, they are not going to get into manufacturing or labor-intensive manufacturing. They are going to get into high value-added areas.
Thank you so much, Dr. Salman Shah, for joining us and talking to us. We're going to take a short break, and when we return, we're going to discuss this further. Stay with us. Welcome back to Indus Special. We are now joined by Michael Arnold, who is a Middle East expert, and also joined by Belal, who is the Executive Director of Justice Project Pakistan. While we take our debate forward, before that, I'd like to talk to Dr. Javed Iqbal previously about what we were mentioning about Saudi Arabia moving towards greater self-reliance. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I think this is really an opportune moment for Saudi Arabia to look east, and Pakistan is number one there. What we can do for Saudi Arabia and what Saudi Arabia can do for us, it's a multifaceted approach now. But when we talk about agriculture, self-reliance, Saudi Arabia can, or will in fact, because they're talking on these terms now, will lease some land from Pakistan and grow its wheat. Some 25 years ago, there was an international exhibition in Saudi Arabia, food exhibition, and there Saudi Arabia exhibited its own wheat grown in Hail and Qasim regions. And at that time, I remember the rate was 6 riyals a kilo, the production rate. And a representative of our neighboring country said, we can sell you this wheat for 2 riyals a kilo, 2 riyals a kilo. Why are you spending 6 riyals on growing it? And I remember the Minister of Agriculture said, we want our own wheat. We want to be self-dependent, self-reliant on that. Okay, that's over now. But later on, slowly and slowly, water went down. So 5 or 4 meters every year it went down. So Saudi Arabia has realized. So they stopped growing wheat there now. It's only local vegetables grown there. And now they're looking for the land, and Pakistan is a very good country proposal for them.
And Dr. Javed, you have mentioned how Pakistan serves as an opportunity, but I'd also like to take the same question to Mr. Arnold here. So when we're talking about greater self-reliance, what opportunities are available in the Middle East at large for Saudi Arabia to look towards?
I think it's definitely becoming a more palatable option for Saudi Arabia at this point, particularly as it seems that maybe the type of relations that they wanted with the United States are maybe not seen as reliable moving forward. So of course, Pakistan represents a great opportunity for Saudi Arabia in that regard. Within the broader Middle East, of course, they have already developed big, significant economic relationships with countries in the surrounding region. So, that could increase as well. Pakistan going into, of course, increasing relations with China, deeper into other parts of Asia as well. So there's plenty of space for that.
And Mr. Arnold, while we also mentioned earlier about the cultural reforms that are taking place here, how have they been impacting the region?
Well, I think that's hard to say at this point. Of course, there's always this aura of the reform discourse that hangs over Saudi Arabia, which has become particularly so in the last few years under the de facto leadership of the Crown Prince. However, there's been a number of reports that have come out that have looked at particularly American media discourse on Saudi Arabia, and this idea of cultural reform, religious reform, economic reform, and Saudi Arabia being the potential leader of this in the region has existed for 60 or 70 years. So I think it's very difficult to say what cultural reforms there have actually been, and therefore it's hard to judge what their impact on the region is.
Michael, there's also another thing that they are working towards, which is the rehabilitation of economic cities and trying to especially focus on those that have a comparative advantage. What can you tell us about that? What impact will that have on the Middle East and the regions surrounding it?
Well, again, before we address that, I think it's important to look at the overall stability in the region. I mean, all of this stuff is fine and good, and I think, if it could actually proceed as it's written down on paper, nobody would oppose it. It would be really great. I mean, it would be something that would be difficult to oppose.
I'd like to go on to Sarah Belal here. So, of course, in a very, very important development, the Crown Prince has said that they will release almost 2,107 prisoners from the Saudi jails. What can you tell us about that development?
So we're absolutely overjoyed. At Justice Project Pakistan, we've been working for many years to represent Pakistanis imprisoned abroad. And out of approximately 11,000 Pakistanis overseas that are imprisoned, 3,300 of those are in Saudi Arabia. So it's the largest population of overseas Pakistani prisoners. When you look at the other, numbers surrounding them, so, something like 2.7 million or even more Pakistanis are actually a part of the migrant workers community in Saudi Arabia. So we get it's the second largest migrant workers community there. We also get 30% of all the remittances that Pakistan earns comes from Saudi Arabia. So even within the Gulf, this kingdom and its direct impact on Pakistanis traveling for work is massive. Yeah. So we're absolutely overjoyed that 3 out of 3,300, which are the latest figures, 2,107 prisoners are going to be released. There's still more work to be done, but credit where credit is due. This administration has done what was absolutely required. Having a friend and an ally in a country such as that does not mean that you imprison and execute many of our citizens who fall short of due process standards. So critical first step, and well done to the PTI.
And of course, like you've said, it was critical and it was the step in the right direction. But of course, it's going to follow with a lot of legal complications, I assume. What can you tell us about that? What is to follow now?
So, this can't be a one-off, right? It is the right step. And it's an important result, but it cannot be a one-off. So we need to lay down the systems that protect Pakistanis when they are abroad. In this scenario, what happens to the other 11,000 prisoners or even the 1,200 that will remain in Saudi Arabia? We need to have a consular protection policy in place. We have a very competent foreign office. We've had it for 70-something years. They need to come up with a basic consular protection policy that guarantees and lays down how our government will protect our citizens when they travel abroad and meet distress. Number two, we know that a prisoner transfer agreement is in process of being negotiated with Saudi Arabia. It should be there for the United Arab Emirates as well, where the next highest number of Pakistanis are imprisoned. So we need to negotiate those agreements with Saudi Arabia to make sure that not just these 2,100 Pakistanis, but the ones that will keep coming through are given the adequate protections that they deserve as Pakistani citizens. And we are very hopeful that with this step will come those things to follow.
And Mr. Mansoor, on that same note, what impact is this making on the society at large? Of course, it's a landmark agreement. It's a move that was critical, but what can we expect in terms of the societies, both communities?
Certainly, there have been a lot of fear as we are on the corner of around the corner of Hajj, and most of the people who travel during these days, they are given very strict warnings regarding the Saudi laws, especially that dealing with the narcotics or export of narcotic stuff. So most of the people who fall prey to Saudi laws, they are basically victim of the drug transportations. And the other major majority or major chunk of the majority that falls prey to Saudi laws, that is basically violation of their respective immigration laws. So we need to, Ms. Sarah has rightly pointed out that we should develop a due consular policy that deals with the or that protect the legal rights of the detainees abroad, not only in Saudi Arabia but in other parts of the world, especially where most of the lower middle class and the mostly illiterate people, they are going for labor jobs over there.
There's just one other point that's really important, is that Saudi Arabia to date has been the highest executioner of Pakistanis imprisoned abroad. So the number was the highest last year, which was 30. So one of the other things that should accompany this release and this incredible appeal for mercy that's been responded to is that while they negotiate a prisoner transfer agreement, which is being negotiated, they must stop, the Saudi authorities must halt the execution of Pakistanis until the prisoner transfer agreement is finalized.
Yeah.
So we hope that that is also something that's on the table. The good thing here is this, look, this is an ally country, and today, by asking and standing up for the most vulnerable Pakistanis, our government has done the right thing that they're constitutionally obligated to do, and the right response has been received from a country that is supposed to be our ally.
And that's a point that is important to remember, that this is a step in the right direction.
Absolutely.
And we have to continue to foster this move. How can faith be regained from the Saudi end?
Well, the thing is that when he starts putting it into practice, Vision 2030, and the economic condition of Saudi Arabia starts getting stronger, definitely many other nations will come in and join there. As we have seen now, there is China, and there are other states in the area that have shown their willingness. Even Iran has shown its willingness to join the 2030 visions. And CPAC is now being connected with 2030. I mean, Prince Mohammed bin Salman is very interested in CPAC. That's why they're setting up a refinery there, an oil city, in fact, in Gwadar. So he is, I will call him, he's a visionary who understands the needs of the youth of Saudi and how the future will be, and he's making very right moves. So definitely he will get very good response from the surrounding states.
Mr. Mansoor, let's move back to you. When we were talking about all the development that's taking place, there is this quality of life program 2020. What can you tell us about that? Focus is supposed to be on infrastructure development, on lifestyle improvement. What does that mean? What does that entail?
You might have seen the best use of the information technology recently taking place in Saudi Arabia. And we have heard a lot of fame talk about a robot that was named as Sophia. So this basically was an effort to introduce the technology-based or technology-driven industry into the country that can help reinvigorate the country's economy.
Yeah.
Because the Saudization process that is taking place in Saudi Arabia, it is basically not only depriving some of the expatriates from their jobs, but they are bringing the machine-driven technology into the Saudi economy. So, in a way, a more modernized or more technology-based jobs are being created.
But how will that reconcile with the need to create more jobs for the people over there? Because there is a high unemployment rate that they also want to tackle.
Certainly, as I mentioned, that it would be a new era, a new avenue of job creation. Means based instead of doing those jobs with their hands, now the technology-driven facilities, they will be basically furnishing those purposes.
Yeah, and Dr. Javed, with the advancement in artificial intelligence, as Mr. Mansoor mentioned here, with that robot Sophia coming about and creating a huge wave, what do you think is the way forward when we're talking about creation of more jobs? Because that's always been a fear of artificial intelligence. When it comes about, there will be loss of job, but here there is going to be more jobs coming forth. What is your opinion regarding that?
When it comes to creation of jobs there, the government has passed a law for all the organizations and factories and industry. First, a couple of years ago, they said at least 30% Saudis should be employed in your factories. Now they have made 70% Saudis should be employed in the factories. But that's why, we have expatriates now slowly moving out. So Saudis are getting into factories, are getting jobs there now, although they're inexperienced. But slowly and slowly, they're learning the process and they're getting into the factories, they're in the factories. As far as robotics is concerned, They are in touch with most of the advanced organizations in the United States and the West.
Yes.
Yeah.
So as I understand now, robots are also being tested in the field of medicine, in surgery, in other areas where they can easily make do with the machines.
Yeah. And Ms. Sara here, while we were talking about the prisoners here and of course legality regarding that, I'd also like your opinion on when we're talking about the lifting of the ban on driving. And I will reiterate, while it seems like the step in the right direction, it can of course invigorate society in a positive manner. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think as a woman on a very basic level, I'm not the expert on this, so I work on prisoners, Pakistani prisoners at home and abroad, but I mean, as a woman, seeing women anywhere in the world get their basic human rights, and this was long overdue, is a welcome step.
When we're talking about past wrongs being fixed, what social reforms now need to be expected along with this Vision 2030? But of course, there needs to be strengthening of legal reforms. What can you tell us about that?
In terms of the Saudiization process that is taking place in the kingdom, I feel that there are most of the people, especially expatriates, they are they are falling prey to the Saudi laws sometime, because especially their Saudi employers who are called kafils, because they sometimes use the overedge which is given to them by virtue of their nationality and by virtue of their legal rights over there. So sometimes they also misuse those laws and violate the basic human rights of their employers.
And Sara, over here, how important is legal awareness, knowing about your rights, knowing about what needs to be done? What can be done about that in the Saudi community?
So more than in the Saudi community, just in terms of the Pakistani migrant workers, a massive amount of them that actually go and do travel to the Gulf for work. We need to work in Pakistan to inform them much better, to regulate the practice of who goes abroad, how they go abroad, what happens to them when they go abroad, how do they assimilate, how are their rights protected. All of those systems, I mean, these people, Pakistanis that travel to the Gulf for work, are actually going and actually sending money back that bolsters the state. So it is the responsibility of our state to make sure that not only are its citizens protected when they're going abroad, but essentially they know what they're getting into. And I have to say, I mean, for this government, especially the Minister for Sayyid Zulfi Bukhari, the Minister for Overseas Pakistanis, in the very short time that he's been here, we have seen him make those committees and make moves in the United Arab Emirates, now in Saudi Arabia, that were at a pace that is much faster than we've seen before. So that it really gives us hope that all aista, one by one, these things are going to be set right.
Yeah.
Especially the Protectorate of Immigration Department, which is working here in Pakistan, that basically safeguards the rights of people who are traveling for work purpose abroad. But I have seen personally many irregularities that are taking place. Means they don't ask the people where is your contract, who is employing you, because most of the people who go abroad, they go on visit visas and then they search job out there and then they employ themselves. So basically our embassies abroad, they do not have any legal documentation record of the people who are coming abroad for jobs. So we have to streamline these things also.
Dr. Javed, I'll end on the same note before we're ending the show on which I began. We're seeing all these steps in the right direction, but what needs to be done in the immediate future, in the near future, in order to ensure that all this progress doesn't go in vain, it goes in the right direction?
Well, in the case of Pak-Saudi relations, I should say, Saudi Arabia is going to build Neom, the city there. It's expanding its own cities, including Riyadh. And for that, I would like Pakistan to train its manpower in the right direction and supply it to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And I agree with her that the people who leave this country, they should be trained, first of all, given orientation on what the Saudi laws are and what they should do when they reach that country. I envy the Filipinos because when they come, Filipino nurses especially, when they come here, they already know the Arabic language, surprisingly, because they're given full training before coming to Saudi Arabia.
So, of course, for people-to-people contact,
we have not only that, government-to-government contact, and also the ministry should cooperate, and we might set up some special training centers for Saudi Arabia, where Saudi officials should come and train our labor on the laws of Saudi Arabia.
And that's a great recommendation there, that we start creating cultural centers here in order to ensure that the first process is done in the home country before individuals move to that country. They're aware of their rights. There's legal awareness created here. With that, we're running out of time. Thank you, Mr. Mansoor Jaffer, for joining us, Dr. Javed Iqbal for joining us, Sarah Belal for joining us. Thank you for watching Indus Special. We'll see you again tomorrow. Take care.